Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. The international cyclocross season is really starting with the World Cup in Waterloo. Thank you for being here, Issam, to take a look ahead at the World Cup in general and of course the race in Waterloo.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So I'll briefly break down what you will be expecting from us in this podcast. First, we will discuss the calendar. Then you will hear from Jules van Kempen, one of the American riders racing in Waterloo. He shares a little bit on his season so far and his goals for the Waterloo World Cup, as well as some anecdotes about him racing in Europe. After that, we will preview the World Cup in Waterloo, and whilst we discuss that, we will take a look at some of the riders targeting the World Cup, some of the riders missing, and what that tells us for the rest of the season. So let's start with the calendar. The opening round, as pretty much traditionally the last couple of years, is Waterloo. After that, we go to Europe, but that is after 1 week of rest. We race Maasmechelen. Then there is another week of rest, which is the European Championships, and then it's full on for the World Cup season. We are racing in Dendermonde, which comes back on the calendar. Then we go to Troyes, which is a new race, or Troyes in France. Then we go to Dublin. Flamanville returns. Val di Sole takes place in the second weekend of December. And then we come to the Christmas period when we are racing in Namur, Antwerp, Gavere, Hulst and Zonhoven. After the national championships, we have Benidorm and Hogerheide to complete the World Cup season. Issam, what are your thoughts on the calendar?
We see a lot of elements that we have seen before, but obviously with the addition of Troyes and Flamanville, I'm happy to see Dublin still in it. I think that it's good that for a year maybe we have a little bit more stability, but obviously for the next coming years, I think that we shouldn't stop pursuing more international races. In my opinion, I think that a one-off American race is probably not going to cut it. It's not sustainable in my opinion as well, because we already had we had some teams and riders already complaining about the trip, the annual complaining, I would say. We still have maybe a little bit too many Belgian races. You could say that in a way it's understandable that we have more Belgian races than, for example, American races or Italian races, in a way, because they bring a lot of money in, the Belgian sponsors, the Belgian that is understandable. But I think that for the future, as a Flanders Classics, you should be trying to get more international races in and have a calendar that makes maybe a little bit more sense as well, especially regarding the December month, which is crazy packed at the moment. And I think that you should maybe look into a more balanced calendar, and that's probably the right word. More balance in the calendar. That's is something that they are searching, but you cannot expect from one year to the other to have enormous improvements on the calendar, because you have certain contracts that are still standing out and stuff, so we cannot expect the most out of it. But for me, it works out for now. I don't think that the riders are very happy with the December month, but overall I think that it's an okay calendar and something you can work with in the future.
I would say this calendar is a small step backwards, and of course we have factors coming into play. Tabor is organizing the World Championships, which is why they aren't in the World Cup, and with them you might be looking at a different situation, but 6 races in Belgium, 2 in the Netherlands, that's 8 out of 14 in a very small, compact region. That's too much. I would rather have seen 1 or 2 Belgian races out and a new international one in. I guess that wasn't a possibility. As far as I'm aware, the options they were working on, London didn't capitalize again. Munich has financial issues. It becomes tricky, especially when Fayetteville decides to not come in. So I guess their hands were tied down, and this is what they had to do it with. As you say, one race in the US is not ideal. I think it's important that we still go despite the complaints. It's a World Cup. You cannot only host that in Europe. I think it's fair enough that we go there. What I do like is the fact that we see a more robust scene in France. This is, I think, the model that the World Cup should try and work towards. We had Flamanville. They organized 1 year. Other year they were out. Now they're back. That has to do with subsidies in France. You get a big subsidy every other year. And I think it's good to see it this way. We have Troyes stepping in Very, very nice course. I love that. And then Besançon is out, and next year Besançon can come in. I think this would be a strong model where you have a handful, like 4 or 5 races maybe, that can rotate for 2 places on the World Cup calendar. I would not entirely be surprised if we see another World Cup in France, Louvain. They are organizing the World Championships in a couple of years' time. Maybe they step in. This is a race that has experience, so maybe they don't, but that's a model I would like to see. And then finally, my final point of criticism would be the Christmas period. I think that the World Cup is giving a wrong signal by putting 4 World Cups in 2 weeks there in a period which is already busy. And that also brings me to the point where we have Thomas van der Spiegel, the CEO of Flanders Classics, saying there's too many races in Belgium. But at the same time, the World Cup brings 2 extra races to Belgium. Dendermonde and Maasmechelen are pretty newly founded races, which doesn't really match with those statements. But at the end of the day, we'll have to deal with it. We'll report on it, and I do think that there's positives to take from this. Benidorm coming back, Dublin coming back, Troy being there, Flamanville there. Those are all very good events and good additions to the World Cup calendar. Well, with that out of the way, let's go and hear from somebody who's way more interesting than we are, Issam. Jules van Kempen, racing for the Cervelo Orange Living team, the runner-up at the U23 National Championships last year, racing in Waterloo this weekend, raced in Europe the past couple of seasons. One of the more talented American riders out there at the moment. He had quite some interesting things to tell us. With me here now is Jules van Kempen, racing for the Cervelo Orange Living Racing Team. Thank you for being here. Always good to have an American who speaks quite a bit of Dutch on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You are a last year U23 rider. This year it's your first year on racing on the new Cervelo Orange Living Team. How has that been?
It's been pretty awesome. I mean, we got a pretty great crew of Sydney, Kaya, and me, and then our mechanics, Charlie, Chris, and James. And I mean, it's a pretty awesome atmosphere to hang out with, and pretty stoked on how the first 3 weekends have gone. I mean, everyone's had really good results and just having a really good time hanging out and racing. Yeah.
So how does it look like to be racing as a team, or maybe more the training? So for the people who are listening and don't necessarily know the Cervelo Orange Living Team, it's a U25 team created for development opportunities for North American riders. But the Belgian teams, we will always see Paul Sauze, Baloise Trek always train together on the Wednesday or the Thursday. What's that like for you? I know you and Kaya live relatively close together, but how does it work?
Yeah, so the training together is a little more difficult because obviously we don't all live within a couple hours of each other. But the last 3 weeks we were on the road together, staying together through in between the races. So we'd go out for a couple training rides together, or at least start together and do our intervals or whatever. But yeah, training with others is more difficult here. Here in Boulder, we have a pretty good group. There's like Eric and Scott Funston and a couple other fast local guys that we can get together and train a couple times a week or once a week. So that's been pretty good. But yeah, training together with your team is a little bit hard. Me and Kai will occasionally meet up and go for a ride, but the spread outness of all the riders in the US makes that hard.
Well, one place, as you say, where you were together was at the races, and the results have been pretty good. Everybody scored a bunch of top tens, a couple of podiums by Sydney. How satisfied are you by your own results? 6th in Rochester as best placement, 7th in Renault, 8th in Charm City day one?
Pretty happy with it. I mean, it's kind of where I expect it to be. I know I can be like, I physically feel strong enough and know I'm strong enough to be a little further up. I think there's a couple more things I need to work on in order to like stick that front group. I mean, my starts have all been relatively slow, which has made the opening couple laps tough for me and trying to chase back, try and make it to that second group because usually the front group's gone. So honestly, I'm expecting a little bit more from myself throughout the season, but I think it's a pretty good starting point. Try and be consistently in that top 10 or just outside of it if something goes wrong. But yeah, it's been a good start to the season for sure.
Last year at the U23 National Championships, you got a second place behind Andrew Strohmeyer. He's a rider that's been competing for the win in the USCX Series races this year. Is that a step you aspire to make as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think I have all the capabilities to be up there. I think I've made a little bit too many mistakes in these opening races to be in that front group. But yeah, I think that's a step I want to make. And I think I want to show myself that that's possible for me too. And I mean, Andrew's been riding super strong and he's probably the favorite for in the U23s for the Americans this year. And so, yeah, I really want to bring the challenge to him and see if I can get the better out of him.
So far, your results this season have always been better on day one than on day two. I know this was not the case last year, but would you say that you are stronger on day one, or was it more a case of just things not going your way by incident on the second day?
Um, I feel like usually I'm stronger on the second day, but this year it's been opposite. Yeah, this year it's kind of just been the second days, something's always gone wrong. So in Roanoke, I crashed just in the mud on the first lap, made a mistake and just wiped out. And then Rochester in the mud again, I just started on the wrong tires and made mistakes by that way and found myself back in the 20s, so had to chase back up. And then, yeah, in Baltimore, someone crashed in front of me in one of the first couple turns, and me and him were in dead last by that point. So that was a long day of chasing too. But yeah, I feel like usually I can also perform well on the second day. It just hasn't happened this year yet.
Well, we're going to Waterloo. The second day of racing there is the World Cup. What are you expecting from yourself or the course in terms of weather and everything?
It looks cooler, which is going to be nice. Not hot like some of the opening races have been. I mean, the course is always, if it's dry, it's super fast. A lot of group racing. It's usually pretty windy there. It's like a flat, open, wide field. So sitting in a group will save you a lot of energy. I mean, it's a super fun course. There's a lot of little technical little bits through the woods and some fun off-camber sections. I know there was earlier this week there was forecasted some rain for Friday, which could spice it up a little bit. I've never raced that course in the wet, but from what I've heard, it looks like a hoot. It'll be a cool race. I think I'm not really sure in terms of results what I'm aiming for yet, but I mean, just have a good start, stick in a good group, and see how long I can hang on to some of the guys that are coming over for this one.
Would you say that the course matches your skill set, and if not, what course would?
I think it's pretty well attributed to my skill suit. I think it's got a little bit of climbing, not too much. I usually like a course with a lot of climbing. That's good for me. A bit more running. This one doesn't have. It has the one run up, but not much else from that standpoint. I think a course kind of what Jingle used to be was kind of perfect for me. I love that course. I mean, so much climbing and a lot of fun descents and stuff like that. So it's a shame that that one's not around anymore. But yeah, I mean, Waterloo stills, I think you can't limit yourself in what courses suit you or not. You just kind of got to race what they give you. But yeah, it's a fun course. Last year I've had decent rides there. So yeah.
Jingle Cross, Iowa, for the people listening not too familiar with the American names. But if you like a course with climbing, is Iowa then also the favorite course you've ever done, or would we be surprised by maybe a different answer for that?
I think Hulst is probably my favorite course that I've ever done. Going up the dikes or the walls there is was awesome. And I mean, yeah, that course is super fun. But I think Iowa is probably my favorite course in the US that we get or got to ride. But yeah.
So back to Waterloo, will you also be racing the Trek CX Cup on the Friday?
I'm planning on it. I'm getting over a little bit of a sickness, so as long as everything feels good, I'm planning on racing Friday. But if I still have any lingering issues from my cold, then I'll probably sit that one out. But the plan is to, yeah.
What would you say the importance of having an American World Cup is to the American cyclocross circuit?
I mean, I think everyone here thinks it's pretty important. I mean, Trek's always a huge party. A lot of people actually come out to spectate that race. I mean, a lot of like the USCX races, we don't get that many spectators. A lot of people will hang around after the race and watch and cheer, but Sundays can be pretty empty. So I think it's important for like us as a spectator. A lot of people want to come watch that one, but they also come and race, and I think it's probably the best atmosphere around a cross race we have in the US. And I think it's a good opportunity for a lot of people in the US to race a World Cup that just kind of experience what the level's like. If they're thinking about traveling to Europe and racing in Europe, you get a little bit of a taste. Obviously it's not the same level or depth of field as you would get in a European World Cup, but I think it's important that we have one, at least one that we have, and I hope it sticks around.
Do you think that Waterloo in itself also functions as like a higher goal to work towards? That for many American riders, it's like a goal. Oh, I want to race at least the World Cup and Waterloo at some point in my career.
I think so, yeah. I think a lot of the people who obviously for the US World Cup, we get more start positions. So I think a lot of people will try and make it a goal of, oh, I want to earn a start position at Waterloo this year. So I know there's a couple people I know that were super stoked to get one of those last couple positions to really get a taste of it and obviously race against some of the best in the world. So I think for some of them, it's just an experience that they want to have one day, and they're not really too concerned about how they're going to perform. But yeah.
For Europeans, there's always a lot of talk about travel, jet lag, money, and enough has been said about that. So I would like to shine the light more from an American perspective, because the travel for you, not only between US races, is a lot, but also when you come to Europe, it's it's very challenging to get everything together. We spoke earlier at the Montana Cross Camp in the summer. I was wondering if you wanted to share some of your experiences when you came to race here as one of the only Americans during the 2020-2021 COVID season.
Um, yeah, so that was my first year U23. So the first year I could race in elite races, and there was nothing happening in the US. And so I have a Dutch passport because from my parents, and so I could go over because the borders were closed to everyone else, but I'm a Dutch citizen, so I was able to get in, and so I was like, fuck it, why not? I'm gonna go. And so I flew over by myself, stayed with my uncle and all my cousins for 6 or 8 weeks, something like that, and just kind of raced a bunch of elite World Cups. That's because that's kind of all what was happening. And obviously, I wasn't really at a level where I could be competitive in those. So I was starting at the back with my 0 UCI points and just kind of seeing how long I could stay in the race before I'd get pulled. But I think it was a pretty great learning experience. I mean, just racing over there, getting my teeth kicked in, just really showed me what the level was like and what to aspire to. Getting lapped by Wout while running through fields was also fun. But yeah, it was fun. I mean, just hung out with some family and just tried to make the best of COVID instead of sitting in my apartment alone, just training. But yeah, it was a good time.
Well, the both years after you've come back to Europe, was that in a similar situation, or were you able to stay with the team or support then?
So those years, the previous 3 years, I was on the Alpha group team. And so we'd go over as a team for a couple races in January usually. There, we had more support from our own team mechanics and had other teammates to ride with and train with and stuff. So that was good.
Do you have any plans of coming to Europe this season?
Yeah, the plan is to try and after Pan Am's come over for the U23 World Cups in France and Ireland, see if we can make that trip work, and then go back to the US for nationals, and then after nationals go back to Europe, try and hit some more U23 World Cups and maybe the end of the curse period, building up towards Worlds as a goal.
If you were to come over, Troy would be your first U23 World Cup. It's kind of weird, right? This is going to be your second year racing Waterloo, but no U23 selections.
No, I've kind of never been there at the right time to race a U23 World Cup, which is kind of weird. I've never gone, or at least during my U23 years, I've never gone for the earlier junior/U23 World Cups. And then I've kind of always come too late and left too early for the other U23 World Cups. So yeah, I think it's definitely something I want to do this year. But yeah, it's funny. I've raced a lot of elite World Cups, but never a U23 one. So in my last year, I should be able to check that one off.
Well, I can imagine that is one of the season goals. Do you have any other goals this season?
I think win nationals is one of the biggest ones. Second last year, obviously want to do a step better in my last year U23. I've never won a national championship before, so that's probably the overarching goal for this year, and then obviously have a presence in Europe once we go over there. And then Pan Am's would also be relatively large goal just because it's a race for a jersey, and that one will also be cool in Montana.
Best of luck. Thank you for your time and safe travels to Waterloo.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It was great.
That was Jules van Kempen racing for the Cervelo Orange Living team. We will now continue by taking a look ahead at the racing in Waterloo. As Jules said, weather conditions are not looking great, or, well, for us they are. It's going to be raining in the days ahead of the event. We could see a pretty muddy course there. We had that a couple of years ago. I remember a battle between Iserbyt and Aerts there in the rain. That was a pretty good race. I'm hoping we could see another one. Regardless of the conditions, my favorite for the men's race would be Eli Iserbyt. He made the strongest impression on me in Beringen. He had that bad start, he had that mechanical issue, still competed for the win. I would say he's the favorite going into this race. He's won here 3 times. What do you think?
Yeah, I can agree with that statement, but it is something that I didn't like about him in Beringen was his way of trying to stay a little bit more at the back. I don't know if it was because he wanted to be a little bit more, save energy and be conservative, but it was, I didn't like that. So, and he has some trouble. Also last season, he had some races where he didn't start very well, which obviously with these type of conditions, if you're not at the front from the start, there could already be a gap. There could be some guys that break away. You don't know. So I think that what you say is correct in terms of that he is the favorite. But I think that he is not really going to be the clear favorite with this field. I think that what we have seen in Beringen, totally different compared to what it's probably going to be in Waterloo, but still, the field was pretty close, and I think that we might see some of these guys really give it a go and try to be at the front. And I don't know, it's gonna be difficult as well with the travel for the guys. It can be a weird race in a way. So I would agree with you that Iserbyt is definitely the favorite, but I really want to see what the others can bring up. Thibaut obviously is on a very high, but then he obviously with the type of course that we're going to have now, how is he going to deal with that? That's going to be a thing. Laurens Zweek looked quite good, so we have to see what he can do. So I think there are quite some names that can bring up a fight for against Iserbyt.
Yeah, those names you mentioned would be my 2 and 3 favorites for the race. I agree. I don't think Iserbyt is the outright favorite or the clear favorite here. A couple of seasons ago, we would have expected him to be. He would really dominate these early season races, but I don't think we'll see that this year. He's my favorite for the reasons I just mentioned, but I think his 2 main rivals will be Thibaut Nys. You ask how he will do on this course. I think he's going to do very well here. Last year he ended 5th here, put in a very strong last part of the race there. The year before he was doing super well here. He was in the front of the race. That was one where it started raining during the race. He crashed on the tarmac corner before the Trek Factory hill. That was unfortunate because he was at the front, he was looking good, and this year he's looked good. Of course, one race is not exactly a very big sample, but he looked good. And Zweek, well, for reasons, the reason being that crash, we didn't see him compete at the front, but he was doing relatively well. Beringen is not at all a course that suits Laurens Zweek. He's a big guy, he's not a good climber. In Waterloo you will find a course that's better to his liking. If it's a bit slick, Zweek likes a bit of the thin mud on the top layer. Waterloo not really a course normally that gets thick mud. Those would be my 3 favorites. And then behind that, I would probably place Van Toerenhout and Van der Haar, both because they didn't make a great impression on me in the first race in Beringen.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, Van Toerenhout, I don't know what it was, but especially when Nijs was attacking on those hills, Van Toerenhout dropped quite, I wouldn't say quite easily, but he was really struggling there. Quite a performance to then get the podium still in the end there in Beringen, but yeah, I don't know. He has the experience though, and if it's, if the course is not going to be as slow as we expect it to be, you don't know what can happen in that race, and then he obviously has a better chance, because it's it's still not going to be a very fast race. So I think that maybe a slower race could suit him a little bit more, and then he could be in the mix. And for Van der Haar it's the same thing, and Van der Haar has a lot of experience, he's a smart guy, knows how to race, and that could help him out with these type of races. I think that, at least I hope as well, is that the riders will be as close as they were in Bering in a way, and that the tactics have to be played, and the riders have to think about what they're gonna do with their energy throughout the race, and manage the race, and try to be the smartest. And I hope that the smartest can then win the race. So we'll see what happens.
I do expect the racing to be pretty close. Waterloo is a track that makes for some relatively okay group racing. It does have quite a bit of corners which will stretch it out. A lot will depend on the conditions, but I think there's going to be a couple of other guys in the mix up front here, Issam. Last week in Indianapolis, Joris Nieuwenhuis race took the win on the Saturday. Was a close battle with Eric Brunner, the Pan-American champion. These are two riders that should be able to do well here. We know that Brunner is mainly best on the very fast courses. I have not really seen him do super well on the more muddy courses, but in theory he should be able to do that if he has the power. Trek CX Cup, I don't really... Well, yeah, no, 2 years ago, no, not more, it was more than 2 years ago. The race 2 years ago, it started raining during the race. I think it was the 2019 race when Iserbeet beat Aerts. They moved the fences, so there was quite a lot of green available in the elite race, which didn't make it that technical. Brunner should be able to do fine. And how can we forget about Andrew Strohmeyer? He was on fire in the USCX series. He's been there for a longer while because he's American. He's not jet-lagged. These are riders that should do well, and if we mention those, why don't we throw Curtis White in, although I think that is a bit of a longer shot.
Yeah, I do think so as well, but those names are definitely ones that will try to get themselves at least within the top 10, and who knows what type of day they will have, and how the others will get through the transfer of getting from Europe to the States. That is... I think that is also something that you shouldn't underestimate, the traveling, dealing with a small jet lag, but it's still kind of there. And, one could deal with that a little bit better than others. And the guys that you mentioned, the latest guys that you mentioned with Strohmeyer and stuff, and Curtis White as well, those guys, they already are in the States. They have been there, for a long time. So... for them, it's just going to be another race, but then a World Cup. But for the others, it's going to be with the traveling and stuff. That might be a bit different and difficult for them. So it can play very well for those guys, and I really hope they do well, because I think it would be great publicity for the United States to have those riders at the front of the World Cup.
Based on the 4th place Brunner scored in Fayetteville last year, and to be honest, he should have ended in the top 10 of Waterloo as well, but he had a crash or a mechanical. Based on those results, I would put Brunner in the mix for a podium. Same with Joris Nieuwenhuis. Curtis White, that was more of a long shot. Same with Strohmeyer. Those are two very good riders, but realistically those riders should try and end in the top 10, and if they do, they have a very good result. They will be featuring more with the likes of Anton Ferdinand, De Wietse Meeuwse, Toon van der Bos, Niels van der Putten, Ryan Kamp, perhaps Pim Ronhaar. I think it's difficult to really get a grasp of where they are standing, because we have had one race in Belgium for most of the guys. It was on an atypical course. The way the race unfolded was atypical as well. I'm trying my best to pull out all these different segments we have had in that race, but we just don't have a clear picture before starting the World Cup, and that is certainly different to the years we've had before. Then there are a couple of guys absent. We won't discuss them, I will just mention them. Of course, world champion Mathieu van der Poel not there, will start his season later, just like Wout van Aert and Tom Pidcock. We don't have any news when it will be, but we're expecting it to be something like last season. Felipe Orts not here, still racing in Spain as his usual season planning. He is starting a privateer team from the 1st of January onwards, although it doesn't really matter since he will be racing in the Spanish NC kit anyway. Kevin Kuhn not racing, Circus Reus Technord is not coming. They are one of the teams complaining the most about the costs, calling it too expensive, calling it useless to go if you don't have an international sponsor, saying we should invest in European cross more. We've talked about that with Jules, so we'll leave it with that, but that means no Kevin Kuhn, no Gerben Kuipers. Furthermore, no Timon Ruek, the Lagrange team that was there last year folded. Ruek is now on the Heizomat Rad team, but this is a small team. They really don't have the budget. Plus, there's an important sponsor race in Düsseldorf for them on the Saturday. I think those are kind of the main guys not there. Issam, time for predictions. What is your men's elite race podium prediction?
Okay, yeah. Oof. I don't know. I haven't thought about this. So this is going to be a blank prediction, I would say. I'm really tempted to say Iserbeat, but I hope it's not, to be honest. Not because of the person Iserbeat, but it would be nice to have another winner. I would say nice takes the second in a row. I mean that would be great to see, also for Trek as well. I have trust in Nice. I will go on the bandwagon of Thibaut Nice, and then I would say second Iserbeat and third Lars van der Aar.
I will say Iserbeat, he made the strongest impression on me. Iserbeat narrowly ahead of Zweek, third place for Thibaut Nice. Then we go on to the women's race, and before we preview that, we should mention the sad fact that Zoe Clay, one of the riders who was supposed to race here, has died just yesterday. We're recording this on Tuesday. She was involved in a serious mountain biking accident. I don't know any details about the crash, if it was on just a trail or if she was hit by a car or anything, but sadly she will not be racing as she is no longer here with us. The racing, however, will go on, and the two top favorites for this race are most likely going to be Fem van Empel and Puk Pieterse. Issam, or do you think we should consider any of the other riders besides them?
As much as I want to say yes, I don't think so, to be honest. It depends a little bit on how the racing will go, but I think that from what we have seen in Beringen, I don't expect something from the others in terms of fighting for the win. In my opinion, Van Empel obviously has the rhythm now, kind of, but Pieterse has been going super strong on the mountain bike, so we'll see how that will play out, and I think that those two will be battling each other, hopefully, because I think that if one or the other is missing, it might just be a very solo race at the front. We should be happy that both are starting, and I'm very interested to see how the racing will be between the two, because it's going to be, I guess, a first test early on in the season.
Yeah, it should be. I would give Fem van Empel the edge. I should correct myself from the Beringen podcast, because I actually by accident said that Puk Pieterse had won the cross-country Olympic race in Mont Saint-Anne. That's not true. She ended third. I misspoke myself. She secured the short track overall win in Mont Saint-Anne. She had previously secured the mountain bike overall World Cup win in snowshoe and ended third in the cross-country Olympic race of Mont Saint-Anne. I think that we will see a different Puk Pieterse at the beginning of the season, or it could be relatively similar to what we saw last year, for a matter of fact. Puk Pieterse took an altitude camp before the Mountain Bike World Championships in Legué. After that, she came to the Netherlands. She rested. She didn't train that much. She visited the local youth race that was there. She gave the start to the final stage there. Walked around there a little bit. Trained with friends. Not seriously training, just coffee rides, 80-kilometer rides, 60-kilometer rides. It wasn't that much. Then she went to Andorra for another World Cup. But her lead in the overall World Cup was already so big that she didn't really need to peak for those final races anymore. My understanding is that she's taken it relatively easy. Her form at the moment for those final 2 World Cup rounds was not great. It was solid, proven by the fact that she was up there, only on the podium in Mont-Saint-Anne, but it was not on the level that she had earlier in the season. She's using these races to build. She's racing Waterloo, then she's skipping the Overijse weekend, which is not a World Cup weekend. Then she's racing Maasmechelen before the European Championships. After that, it's my understanding that she will do a relatively limited program for Belgium standards, but that it will be basically the entire World Cup calendar with maybe 1 or 2 extra races in the Christmas period. She doesn't want to overload herself towards the mountain biking season, because her big goal is to become Olympic champion next year. Long explanation, but this should give you an indication of where Puk Pieters is, and that should also give you an indication why I'm favoring Fem van Empel here, because I think for the first part of the season we will see a very strong Fem van Empel, with Puk Pieterse slowly improving every single week.
Yeah, I think that would be the logical way to look at it, because also I would say that, you know, the racing that Van Empel has done is slim to none compared to what Pieterse has done, in my opinion. So, you know, Van Empel is going to be a little bit more fresher starting the season right now, I would say, and then later on when Pieterse comes back, then I think it's going to be interesting to see how both will go into the December month and the Christmas period, and then from there, you know, it's already time for the championships. And I don't know how Van Empel or Pieterse will be looking at this cyclocross season, because I think it is a bit difficult to, you know, have a goal in mind with the Olympics mountain bike, and then also, you know, you're probably looking at the World Championships and you want to win that as well. So it's, you know, it's a bit double, I guess, and you know, it's for her kind of a first time where she has to prepare herself and try to be in the best form in the summer. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that will play out. But I think that I fully agree with you on the matter that Van Empel in the first race is going to be a bit better, and probably as well in the first couple of races where they meet each other, and then from there, you know, we might see that it comes a bit closer and maybe even changes, but that is for later on in the season.
Yeah, and I don't want to repeat too much from the Beringen podcast, but the same goes for Van Anrooy. She's racing this because of Trek, the bike sponsor. Her form is irrelevant. She's going to do a shorter cross campaign starting somewhere in mid-December again, which is pretty damn short, not even in November. But, you know, from there on, she will be in form. She doesn't need to be now. She's resting now. She will build up later. Completely normal. We saw it in Beringen. Normally she ends ahead of Alvarado, especially on that course. Not this time. Which is also why here in Waterloo, I think it's not a certain fact that Van Anrooy is going to end on the podium. I think she should have good opposition from Senda Carmen Alvarado. I think that should be the biggest competitor, I guess. I would probably favor Alvarado a little. I can't really see it. Van der Heijden had a tough race in Beringen. She crashed on the off-camber in the pre-ride. She mentally blocked over that during the race. Waterloo in the dry is a good course for her. If it's a bit muddier, I could still see her up there. But normally I would expect the third place to be between Alvarado and Van Anrooy, with an outside shot of Van der Heijden. What do you think? Are those the names, or should we also start considering Rochette? Because I'm actually looking forward to seeing her in action a lot.
I would definitely mention her as an outsider, I would say, because we you know, while her results at the USCX series were, you know, impressive in a way, it is hard to then compare it to what we have seen in Beringen and then put a label on it and say, well, that is going to be enough for a podium spot, or at least being able to fight. But I think she will not be far off. And in the race, a lot of things can happen, so you don't know how it will play out. And as we have said already by the men, and I don't want to repeat the same thing, but it's there is the transfer. It's just so difficult. So it's the racing is also going to be for some a bit more difficult to digest than for others, with everything that you already had before. So I think that Rochette is definitely within a shout, definitely for a top 5. A podium is going to be very difficult with Van Empel and Pietersen in the race. Leaves you only with one spot in a way. I shouldn't be jinxing it, because now one of the two is going to have something, I guess, in the race. But normally you're going to be racing for the last spot on the podium, and that is with the opposition, with an Alvarado, with a Van Anrooy, with a Van der Heijden. It's then going to be a little bit more difficult. But I think that a top 5 is definitely realistic and definitely possible, in my opinion. But it has to go her way for sure.
If we mention Rochette, we have to mention Zoe Backstedt as well. She won both days in Indianapolis. Her margin over Manon Bakker was not huge. It was decent, but it was not a dominant display. I had the feeling she was mainly racing that on cruise control. She started out, opened the gap, consolidated that, not more effort than necessary. I'm interested to see how that goes. She moved to the Canyon SRAM team. I think it's a good move for her career. I like the fact that she's on the Canyon crossbike now. Support seems pretty good. I'm interested to see what she can do. On a dry course, I would have given her a very good chance of actually ending on the podium. Now I would give her, on assuming what is going to be a bit more of a slippery track, an outside shot to do so. The last name I would like to mention here still, Issam, is the one of Clara Honsinger, the American national champion. She has moved from EF Education back to her local team from Oregon, the team which she won her first national title on before joining the Cannondale World team. What do you expect from her?
I want to say a slow start, but that's not. No, I will not say it. I mean, I don't know what to expect, to be honest. I think that it was for her probably, but I don't know if that is true. But I think it would be quite hectic if you have a lot of uncertainties about how you will how your season will go, with what team you will be riding and all these kind of stuff. It seems that it came a bit later than you would have liked. But then again, you also come in an environment where you are comfortable with, you already know. So I don't think it's going to be a huge difference for her in a way. But yeah, I don't really know where to place it at the moment. I think that if she has a good day, then a top 10 is definitely possible. But you have to have a good day, and I don't know how that will go for Honsinger. So I think it's her first race of the season in cyclocross. So we just have to see how that will play out.
Then there are a couple of riders not here. Let's divide them into two categories. First, the injured ones, Denise Betsema and Lucinda Brandt. Both riders were foreseen to be here, but they aren't. Denise Betsema was hit on training around a month ago. She was hit by a car. Her bike looked very bad. She obtained some, not super serious injuries, but they were serious enough to knock her back. She is therefore not going to the US. She is starting her season in Oosterwijk, which is in the Netherlands, on the same day as Waterloo, but she wants a bit of a slower start, said her preparation was compromised. And then Brandt broke her collarbone in the CIMAC Ladies Tour, and especially for Brandt, I kind of worry for the consequences on the cross season. I don't really know how long she's off the bike, but last year we saw that she was pretty strong in the opening of the season, then had that injury in Tabor, which was a bit less serious than the one she obtained now, but it still really affected the rest of her season. The base wasn't there, so I'm kind of worried that we could potentially see the same happen this year for Lucinda.
Yeah, I think it would be a shame if it would play out the same as it played out last season, but I don't know how much time she will have. I mean, if, for example, she would return into the fields at the end of November, I don't know. There's a lot of racing, but obviously it's not going to be ideal. And then you already, you're kind of out of all classifications, and you could only kind of make a goal of the championships, the nationals, and the world. So, yeah, I think. I don't know. She also has, of course, the road season, and there is only so much you can do about the cyclocross season right now with everything that she has. So maybe she will be try to focus more on the roads and do the cyclocross as preparation, but not more as that. But yeah, bit of a shame, obviously, because I think that she's not the youngest anymore, so you don't know how many more seasons she can be on the top of her games. So yeah, every season that you kind of miss out on is a season too many. So let's hope that she will recover from it fully, and then hope that she can progress with her form and get back to a level that she wants to be at.
Then a couple of riders who aren't here by their own choice or team choice. Cyclocross Reds not sending a single rider. Aniek van Alphen and Annemarie Worst not here. SD Works keeping Mary Schreiber and Blanca Vasch at home. I think that's a real shame. A big team like SD Works would have been an addition here. The AS Bike team is not running at the same budget as a couple of years ago. No Helene Clausel here. Sylvia Persico, of course, still recovering from that road season, doing a more limited campaign. Lynn Burquier recovering from the mountain bike season. She will be coming into the season a bit later. No Lauren Molengraaf, same reason as we had for Kevin Kuhn. Circus Reus Technoord is not sending a team. I think that is kind of it in terms of the absent riders. No Sanne Kant. I mean, you need to go very far down to even see her on the UCI rankings. She's almost outside of the top 40 of the UCI rankings. Kind of hurt when I realized that. Such a great name of the sport, 3-time world champion. Interesting. And then finally, what we should mention is two names who are here, or at least one. Jolanda Neff. She is a good rider on the cross bike on her day, coming right from the Mountain Bike World Cup a couple of years ago. She did very well here. Evie Richard would normally also be starting, but she is sick. However, for Neff Issam, what do you expect? A couple of years ago, she ended on the podium in Waterloo. I personally think those days that she could just turn up on the cross bike to Waterloo and end on the podium are kind of over with how stacked the field has become. Like, the level has increased in the US, just the riders going there, but in general the level of the riders themselves has also increased.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think that it's I would honestly, I would say that if she finishes within the first 8-10 riders, that it is a job well done. And I don't think there is. I think she will just enjoy the racing, and it's obviously most likely on invitation of Trek that has a lot of interest in this race. So yeah, I think that is just going to be enjoy the racing, enjoy the cyclocross, and see how far she can go. So probably, yeah, I wouldn't expect her to fight for a podium or top 5. Would really be a surprise. But I would much rather say maybe within the top 10, maybe just outside of it. But yeah, that's going to be interesting to see where she be placed in the end of the race.
Then finally, Marianne Vos is also not here. I mentioned this previously. She is out for the season due to surgery she underwent just before the season. With that said, it's time for predictions. I will go first and predict a podium of Fem van Empel ahead of Puk Pieterse, and I will slot Zoe Backset in third.
I will probably say Van Empel. Van Empel, Pieterse, Alvarado. I think I will go very safe with this one.
All right then, Issam, thank you for being here. We will be back on Sunday night, so podcast coming on Monday with the Waterloo World Cup recap.
Yes, thank you for having me. Looking forward to the first race of the World Cup.
I hope you enjoyed hearing from Jules van Kempen in this podcast. If you have any comments, feedback, or anything, you can send an email to noah@cyclocross with 3 S's at the end .com. Thanks for listening and see you guys next time. Goodbye.